Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Wow, it is. Yeah, it's interesting. We're back in Florida. We were out in Colorado for a little bit, like we do in like those dog days of summer. And it's so interesting being back and that Florida fall weather, right? And if you live in Florida, then you know, many of you I know that are here don't live in Florida. This is like the sweet spot. This is the sweet spot why we are all here and why people come here to visit. Just very, very interesting and invigorating to say the least. I wanted to, come on here, and normally I come on Wednesdays, but I just felt called, and I find that I'm starting to do that more and more. Was a business coach and helped women around the world launch their businesses. I love entrepreneurship. That was really my sweet spot in finance. I mean, people are always shocked when they hear that I was in the mortgage business, because I'm not really a numbers girl, right? But what I love about my story and how I ended up here is that my love for people, my love for relationship, my love to connect people, and to tapping into what they didn't think was possible because it was already there, and just being, finding solutions. So I titled this, physically alive but spiritually dead. Well, why? What made me, wake up this morning and want to talk about this? Well, again, like I just mentioned, I've moved away from a lot of Hi, Gary. Good morning. A lot of structure, in the way that I run my business. Obviously, you need to have that, but really going on like what feels really good. And I don't mean like the hedonistic, like only go to where it feels good, but I mean, where does it really feel like this is something that needs to be shared, or that I need to, take care of, or whatever it is, because so much of our life is around being scheduled and, to the T, especially these days, right? And so what that does for us, though, is that a lot of that can just take away our spontaneity, especially with women. I mean, we have such a craving for variety, and we are the energetics, right? The feminine is energy. She is vibrancy, and that she is also in men. This is not gender specific. This is the open-hearted nurturing. But I will speak, to women right here, because this is who's here in this group. So, have you noticed though, when you are leaning into that space of wanting things to be just so structured that there's no wiggle room for fun? And, I have a really dear friend of mine who, and I have clients who do this too. They schedule sex, once a week or twice a week or 5 times a week, whatever their, in their relationship mantra, and their model, what they want, and they schedule it. And that used to, years ago, before I started doing this work, I thought it was so interesting and boring, and ooh, they must not be in love. And then the more I started leaning into intentionality, the more I realized is that these are couples who actually realize that being intimate, is important. And sometimes our humanness will get in the way, and it will have us go and do and be other things and forget about what's going on at home. So I'm curious, for any of you listening right now, or all of you listening, that where in your life is there, a space where that the world needs more of you there, whether it's you're going live on social media and using these platforms for the good, or is it perhaps that it's like a no-go, that maybe you aren't supposed to go to that said holiday party, that Christmas party. The holidays are here, they're here, and it's always a very, very busy time for me, with people wanting to basically have a way to work through their triggers, knowing that they're going to be triggered by going home, or having family in and things like that. And so they don't want to bypass, they don't want to spiritually bypass, and in the space of like, well, my mom's just being my mom, or my dad's just being my dad, or, well, my brother. Yeah, instead of like really understanding a deeper meaning of why is it that you have that rub? Why is that? And look at the deeper meaning, and then and be able to, I mean, assuming, of course, it's not abusive. Okay. You already know what I feel about abuse. And then there's got to be a hard boundary around that. I know that we all are the one. We are the one in the collective culture. However, sometimes it's okay to be the one with the collective, but they can be way over there. And that's totally okay. The key is that you can coexist with people that perhaps that you don't agree with, whether it's politics or what have you. So again, physically alive but spiritually dead. And I don't necessarily mean that they all of a sudden, found Jesus. I'm talking about something a little different. It doesn't matter what religious sect that you fall into, but you're just so busy, like the home to work weekend thing, are so busy heads down in the toxic masculine, going on point for your goal, or you want, this is the year you're going to get married, or maybe you're trying to get pregnant. And I've never experienced going through IVF, but I've heard that it's just grueling, and talk about being scheduled with the shots and the this and kind of taken away the magic around potentially the art of getting pregnant. It doesn't mean that it's not artful, right? It doesn't mean that it's not miraculous. Science can be miraculous, right? It is. But again, are you so on point that you've lost the juice, and you've lost the juice for life, and you don't think about the meaning behind why you even do what you do. And these thoughts that are in our head are planted there at really when we're born. And then of course things are spoken over us as we are younger and as we get older, and those words matter. I mean, good, bad, or indifferent. So again, and then we just begin to go about our routine, no matter how exciting your life is, ladies. um, I bet there's many of you who would share with me that they've sort of lost themselves in either their family, either in their job, maybe their relationship, and they feel numb. And so, a lot of us will seek outside validation. Social media is kind of tricky here because we get a lot of validation from social media. Even whether you love it or you hate it, people are looking for the likes, right? They're looking for the comments. And even if you're not using these platforms for business, I guarantee you that's what we do. It is the way that they are designed, right? And so to know that actually helps you, I hope, as it has with me, create big boundaries around it, because I don't want anybody to control me. I don't want anyone to control me. And I definitely don't want it to be a phone, for sure, right? So it's just, again, something to pay attention to. But I mean, again, if we're looking outside of ourselves for, that validation, and everything that we're doing is so we can actually, put it on these platforms, we have lost touch completely. And so how can you add more intentionality in even something, good morning, even in something like that? I mean, going into the grocery store, you have a grocery list, right? Going to see a girlfriend, can you actually just have an intention that this is going to be a really joyous time, where you're there to light each other up? I mean, she doesn't even have to know that you set that intention. I know that may sound exhausting at first. Like, you mean everything I do has an intention? Well, it does, whether you know it or not. So would you rather it be an intention intentionally set by you, or would you rather it be something that you're intentionally doing in a subconscious way that isn't serving the world? Now, eventually, when you're learning new habits and learning a new way of being, I've been talking a lot about the embodied feminine woman, and that's the theme of the masterclass tomorrow. We're doing a free masterclass tomorrow for any of you that may not know. Please come. If you can't come, register anyway, because you'll get the replay. And we're going to talk in a little greater detail around this. But again, being embodied, allows you to really be able to be so in tune to what's happening within this vessel that God gave us. So many of us I see, including me, definitely sometimes, because I'm human, as we forget that we can do really just about anything that we want, create anything that we want. And how do we know that? Is because we're alive, like we're alive here on earth, which means that we're a miracle. We're a miracle walking. We're like a soul in a meat suit, right? And what we choose to do with this life is really up to us. And I know there's circumstances, and I know there's socioeconomic circumstances and what have you. And I'm still going to say that even though there will be a minority, right, and a majority out there, there's going to be discrimination. There's going to be racism. There's so much out there that is dark, that's trying to bring us down, and they're trying to bring us down for control, right? So again, how can you we're one of 8 billion people. How can we actually show up with more intentionality? How can we show up actually wanting to light up the world and use our feminine genius, use our vibrancy to be able to bring some light to what's out there? So, again, if you trust that if you can put your hand on your heart, that you can feel that heartbeat. We didn't ask for that heartbeat. Our creator just is given that to us. And then, so what do we do at that time? And again, I don't necessarily mean you even go out there and do, God's work. I'm not saying that, although that's perfect if you will, and if you do. But are you actually, with everything that you're doing, is that helping you get closer to a deeper meaning? Is it actually helping you get closer to God? Because yes, depending on your belief, you may be reading the Torah, you may be reading the Bible, you may be going to women's groups or men or couples groups or what have you. The key is whatever you're doing, even those classes that are maybe in that, religious institution, are they really bringing you closer to God? Because I can tell you that there have been many a Bible study I've been to through the years. It didn't feel like that at all. And I believe that's probably one reason why I'm in this business that I'm in, and shifted it from business, mentorship, although I still do that with my one-on-one clients, but into this space because I've witnessed firsthand what it feels like to have women turn their back on me, right? To have women, not show up in the best way. Um, I just saw something too this morning. I think someone sent me. They were asking me if this was the toxic feminine, and Candace Owen. I don't know if y'all know who she is. She was talking about Taylor Swift's new album. I didn't even know Taylor Swift had an album coming out. Whatever, that's irrelevant, right? But it was really Candace, remember what you think about her politics or such, that it was just really being mean spirited how she was reviewing this album. And what I loved about the comments is that people were actually saying, I really like you, but I don't like this. And I thought it was really fascinating that, women were actually using what I call stinging the masculine back to consciousness, because that's her masculine that is unconscious, because she has a platform where she's actually well respected within her own community, and she's using that platform just to talk about something that at the end of the day, in my opinion, for whatever it's worth, is irrelevant. But again, if you believe how we do anything is how we do everything, what I was witnessing in those comments is people that really revered her were like, I don't know about this. I'm confused. Can you help me understand? Right? So again, what can you do in these moments? Are you thinking about, even what you're putting on your body before you walk out? And I know we've all heard that adage that you don't know if you're going to get in a car wreck, or I'm sure, and from the cosmopolitan days, and it would be, you don't know who you're going to run into, right? Wink, wink. So do you have clean underwear, right? So if you knew that everything that you were doing was being based on what you're transmitting and the thoughts that you're thinking, would you actually think twice? Would you actually think, I'm alive? Like, I literally am alive. And I have a chance to do some good out there in the world. And that good in the world could literally be a compliment to someone. It literally could be, I have a practice of every day I reach out to 5 people randomly in my phone and my contacts. And I'll just reach out. I do my prayer and meditation in the morning and movement. And then it's like, it I love the art of connection and I love the art of surprise. And like I was mentioning earlier when I popped on, was, that art of surprise, that art of allowing us to live in some uncertainty is the beauty of the juice of the feminine as well. It's that feeling of, there is no time, right? There is no space. We're just here. And for many people who haven't healed their relationship with the feminine, they're annoyed with the people that are in the feminine, women that are in their feminine, a lot. And so it's annoying to them, which by the way is the toxic masculine, because how many of us have been told that they were too much, they were too emotional, will you stop crying, get over yourself. And over time, as I mentioned, that's being spoken over you, or to you, is you start second guessing yourself, and well, maybe I'm not supposed to, or whatever that means. And so those beliefs get implanted. And the cool thing is you don't have to live like that if you don't want to, because once you become aware and you start waking up, then you have a chance to actually work energetically, out in the field. Again, talking about science. Good morning. Is you actually have the opportunity to change that. And so what happens in repetition is you repeat this. It is a conscious action. When you were first learning to tie your shoe, however you learn how to tie. I remember for me, it was, I remember my tongue would always, and I'm putting it together and making this bunny ears, you know what I mean? And then over time, I didn't have to think about it. I didn't even think about bunny ears, right? So your conscious will become your subconscious. And as I mentioned a few minutes ago as well, about the intentionality, is that it may sound like it's a lot of work if you're always thinking about, like, what am I transmitting? Not what are people going to think about me? Very different. That comes from a place of scarcity, but more of, how do I want to feel when I'm doing this thing? Because our thoughts are attached to an emotion. And the neat thing about that is that most of us are driven, by the way, by the negative. We are trying to avoid pain at all cost. So when you become aware of this, what happens is you have a deeper meaning of life. And then you start focusing on the things that are really great. And if you focus on gratitude and receivership, and remember, the receiving is the feminine. You've heard me say when I talk about dating that if you're on a date and you are, or even with your husband, but if it's a date, period, and you're the one asking the questions, where were you born? Do you want to have kids? How was work today? And it's just a constant, parade of questions. You are more in the masculine, because why? Because you're fishing, you're going to get the conversation and bring it to you. This blew my mind whenever I first learned this, because I thought that I was building rapport, which I was. I thought I was building relationship, which I was. But I didn't understand why I kept, ending up in relationships right before I did all this healing work that I now am teaching all of you, is that it was a nervous way for me to control the conversation. It was a nervous way for me to fill the gap, because I was so uncomfortable living in the uncertainty and living in the gap of the unknown, because my brain would be like, does he like me? I don't want to be bored, or, and wanting to lift him up or what have you. And so you can see that we're constantly, obviously, reacting and responding. It's just, are we doing it from a place of fullness? Are we doing it? Who are we being when we're actually doing the thing? What are we thinking? Because if we believe that our thoughts are attached to an emotion, and we can get addicted to pain because it gives us some type of energy boost. It's like the dopamine boost that we get from the likes, or when we see kids playing video games, right? Did y'all know, by the way, that boys video games and girls video games are designed very differently? Girls video games are actually designed for there to be cohesiveness, togetherness, more community, not just dolls and paints, but I mean, really, they're things to actually create togetherness. Where the more masculine and boy driven games are about getting to the next level, getting to the next level, getting to the next level, and so they're designed for that. And you'll notice that even something like, and I'm going off on a tangent now, but we like games. We like to be in We like to be entertained. And we little do we know that we actually are walking, breathing main character in our own movie. Where if you believe in, becoming more aware and more conscious, you start to watch your life like you're watching a movie. I always joke, it's like you're sitting back and eating popcorn, like, oh, there I go again. Oh no, don't do that. You know better. And then, oh, good girl, good girl. And you go through life like viewing yourself. That is when you know you have hit this point of being conscious to who you are and who you're being in this world. What are you doing with that heartbeat that is a gift to you and to the world? Is it something that we're taking for granted? So again, if you believe gratitude is the biggest art of receivership, where else can you cast gratitude for even the things that are very little? And so I'll wrap up with this. I I ripped this out of a magazine yesterday and I thought it was great. I haven't been everywhere, but it's on my list. And I love that because it's such a beautiful, youthful, um, I like to call her like your little girl way of, and I can do anything that I want. And I haven't been everywhere, but I want to, and I've got the luggage for it. You know, I'm 51. I didn't meet my inner child, my little girl, until around 8 years ago. I put her away a long time ago after some things happened in my home. Most women that I work with, I don't care where they're from, what country they're from, how old they are, even, my 19-year-olds, they've pretty much forgotten that little part of them. And so, I believe that there's 10 women that live in each of us, and really 20 because they have their sacred side and then their toxic side. And one of those, you better believe, is around, the curious part of being a child, and to be very, very curious about what's on the other side. And what happens is you lose, like I mentioned in the beginning of this, you lose the need to know all the things. It doesn't mean you're an airhead and you don't know where the checkbook is, your keys, or even what day it is. Although sometimes that's all right too. That was not me 10 years ago. I was in such a need to know basis because of some trauma. And divorce will do that. If you notice that if you've gone through a divorce, your kids like really want to know who's picking them up that day. And they, mommy, you gonna pick me up? They want that reassurance. And that's even for boys. Remember, girls want to be seen, heard, and understood. So, and feel safe. The feminine, not just little girls. So that's why little boys, I remember my son was like that. Whenever I was going through my divorce, he wanted to know who was going to pick him up. And so eventually we just got a calendar so he could see it. But there was stress in that, even though we had a very amicable, uncoupling. We actually lived next door to each other. So don't downplay actually understanding the needs of kids, by the way, because they do need a little more certainty, but they also, we want to like pump up their beautiful juice of, I haven't been everywhere, but it's on my list. So I'm inviting you to step into a more embodied way of living. And embodiment is not just about dancing. I'm really inviting you to come to our free masterclass tomorrow. We have over 100 women, I believe, that have registered so far, and I'm feeling very called. One of my loves who works with me, she's also in the sisterhood now. Adrian, we were chatting around a giveaway. I'm feeling like I want to give something away, and just give, just give something fun away. I don't know really what it's going to be, a sheepskin. I'm not sure. We'll find out. You will see. But come and have a glass of wine, have some tea. 7 o'clock Eastern tomorrow night. I'll put a link in here when I'm done. But we'll talk a little bit more about that. But again, as you go out in the world today, and maybe you're already out there in the world, it's not too late to control alt delete and go, okay, how am I showing up? And what am I grateful for? What am I going to do with this heartbeat today? And how can you bring more intentionality, into your life? It doesn't mean you need to go, initially pray more, or meditate more. What I mean is that, can you actually be a beacon of light, for that incredible heartbeat that something bigger than you placed there? To me, it's God. God placed this here, and you better believe with that inner knowing, I'm going to do something great with it, even when I'm feeling crappy. Because I wasn't feeling well this morning, and I meditated, and when I heard the voice say, "Who do you want to be when you open your eyes? Who do you want to be when you open your eyes?" So, who do you want to be when you're presenting at that meeting? Who do you want to be when you're hosting Thanksgiving? Who do you want to be? And is she a woman who is doing this with a full heart, with no need to get validation from anyone, because she knows that she knows that she knows that she's the one, because she knows that the people across the table from her are the one as well, and then together we are, we're the one, and together we can shift. It just takes one person in a family sometimes to change the family dynamic. So there's a lot in this body of mine that I know, and I love to teach, and that's one reason I lost my voice, because I was teaching all day yesterday, is for everyone to have a life that's so blessed. It already is, but yet they live it as if they know it. And bringing in, that one archetype that I love around that childlike faith, the little girl before she was ever hurt, the little girl before she was ever told that she couldn't or she wouldn't. And it doesn't mean you had to have been abused. It could literally mean you heard over and over again, "Sorry, sweetie, we can't afford that. No, we can't have that." And then guess what happens? Then there's a scarcity belief. Or it's, "I'll never be like that. I'm going to have more than my parents. I'm going to take care of my parents," which is beautiful. But then, as your whole life spent trying to run away from your past, when actually you can instead flip it, still be very successful. But can you do it from a place of seeing the gift and what you went through as a child, or even as an adult? Because I mean, if you've been following me for a while, you know me, there's been a lot of things that have happened to me as an adult that didn't make any sense until I started doing this work that I teach. So I hope that you'll join me tomorrow and keep tapping in here. As I mentioned, I'm going to be doing a lot more teaching within my free group. You can always invite people in here as well. And I hope you'll have a great day, a super day. And you really think about, like, what can you do with this heartbeat, your unique brand? This is your unique brand. So what will you do? Because I know this morning when I wasn't feeling well, I was like, who do I want to be when I open my eyes? What is it that I want to transmit to the world? And it changed my state like that, because there was something bigger than me at that moment, right? It wasn't even that I was going to go, volunteer necessarily. It was, I have a choice of how I show up. And again, I'm not saying you can't have a bad day or a bad minute, because you can hold the duality of being very grateful, but also feeling like crap, right? And that's okay too, because spiritual bypassing is that false positive where everything's great, and so they're always avoiding the pain. They're always avoiding the grief or being alone. Um, and again, when a woman comes to me, many women come to me that are in relationships where, whether they've been married 30 years and they have a good relationship, but it's sort of flat, and they're thinking the kids are gone, it might be time, or maybe they're thinking about having an affair, and that I catch them before that, or maybe they're in it. Most of the time I find that when women step out, especially women, it's generally because they don't feel seen and heard and understood, and they're looking for that connection. Again, I'm not saying I condone it, but I can always forecast it when I hear from a couple what's going on, unless of course there's a dick sex edition or something. That's a different story. But anyway, so if you are stepping into that space of knowing that What are you transmitting out there? What are you going to bring back home? What are you going to be bring back home to the world, and not be false positive like everything's great when it's not? Because when you can hold the duality of, you know, well, I really miss my best friend who passed away. And oh my gosh, I have so many memories. And I can feel both of those and feel the gratitude also with the sorrow. And in the beginning, when I lost her a couple of years ago, the anger, grief is it. I know some people say there's a wheel of grief and there's stages. It's like whack-a-mole. They show up in no rhyme or reason, and they show up in the strangest spaces. It's fascinating, isn't it? So, okay, I'm going to actually close off because I'm going to go off on another tangent, and well, it is what it is, right? So it makes it fun. I hope y'all have a great day. I hope to see you tomorrow, and yeah, what can you do with this beautiful heart of yours? Ciao.